All right, let's hear from some of you through the Friday feedback segment where emails, Facebook comments, YouTube comments, smoke signals, telegrams, Twitter replies, all sorts of communications with the show may be featured on Fridays. If you just want to keep it simple and send an email, you can email info@davidpakman.com. I have to admit, this first message, I don't understand if this is from a Nazi or from someone warning me about Nazis and saying they have taken over. The message is as follows. The weak fear the swastika. You all had your chances to deal with this. You dropped the ball. We told you for years, we are everywhere, and eventually we would have to come out. Well, here we are. Now it's our time to deal with these Weimar conditions. Welcome to National Socialism. Is this a Nazi saying we have now taken over because you didn't stop us? Or is this an anti-Nazi saying because you didn't stop them, the Nazis are now here? I genuinely have no idea. Someone else knows what that message is about. Please let me know. The anti-trans movement continues, and it continues plaguing our YouTube channel. User DesroQC says, thank God for people like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh. These are anti-trans guys from the Daily Wire, fighting against the groomers who are aiming their filth at our children. We are way past being polite and tolerant with you bunch of degenerates trying to indoctrinate, confuse, and mutilate kids. I don't know what this person is talking about. And as I've said before, it seems as though no one is aiming anything at children, but we do have things that exist which parents can decide, I will bring my kid to that, or I won't bring my kid to that. And that's the freedom I thought the right wing advocated for. I thought that's exactly what they wanted. It's very confusing. Rated Arge has a different view about the anti-trans hysteria and says, let's find a small marginalized group of harmless people and really stomp on them and make their lives miserable just to show how big and strong and brave we are. You know, this reminded me, it's a very good point. This reminded me of Arnold Schwarzenegger's recent video, 12-minute video, which was, it dealt with discrimination of all kinds. And certainly you could tell that he was pushing back against the anti-trans rhetoric, but it was also pushing back against anti-Semitism. And one of the great points that Arnold made, referring to his own father, who was a Nazi sympathizer, was all of these movements, these groups, these coalitions based on hate, they end up being losers at the end of the day. You never look back at them and say those were the winners. The people who opposed women voting, those were the losers. They hindered obvious progress in the United States. The Nazis in World War II, of course. The anti-gay people who for 20 years shouted about two men. If you let two men marry, next thing you know, people will be allowed to marry horses. They're losers. They are. And when you look at this comment, which is, it's not a very big thing. Big, and by big, I mean alpha, right? To choose the weakest people and to say that's who we're going to go after. Excellent comment. And I couldn't agree more. Here's a comment about critical race theory. This individual, why am I Mr. Pink, says the issue with critical race theory is that it teaches the idea that systemic racism is a thing when it is not. No one on the right wants to stop the teaching of history. They hate the lies about it. Also, history is complex. Take the issue of slavery. After slavery was banned, many still worked for their owners. Why? Why didn't they pursue a new career and become landowners? Because many were fine in the position they were in. That last part is pretty crazy. The reason some slaves continued working for their owners when they were technically freed was that there was still all sorts of between the lines discrimination that was allowed and was happening. And because many of those folks in their individual situations didn't really have much of a choice. With what money were they going to go and buy land? It doesn't make any sense. But let's go to the more important part. It teaches the idea that systemic racism is a thing when it is not. Listen, There have been major advances in the United States when it comes to dealing with systemic racism of different kinds. And that has taken place to different degrees. We still have a number of different systemic realities in the United States that go above and beyond the individual. For example, there are still significant effects when it comes to public transit in many cities, where the historically redlined neighborhoods disproportionately represented by minorities are much less well connected via public transit. That's a systemic issue. That's a systemic issue where in certain neighborhoods, you're going to have more of an issue getting to jobs in certain parts of the city. And the reason that that is the case is because it is a vestige of racist redlining. Okay, that's a systemic issue. That doesn't mean every aspect of society is racist. There have been a number of interesting studies done where the same resumes are submitted with traditionally identifiably white-sounding names and black-sounding names. No difference whatsoever when it comes to the credentials, and the white-sounding names are much more likely to get an initial interview. That's a systemic issue. The idea is you're just as qualified, but because of a name that is stigmatized with a particular race, you're less likely to even get the opportunity to prove yourself in an interview. That's a systemic issue. Now, that doesn't mean that there haven't been great improvements made as well. So the idea that there are no systemically racist issues doesn't make much sense. Gerald says, I wish every Republican doing an interview would be asked, explain what critical race theory is and explain what woke is. Yeah, me too. We've talked about this before. When they are asked to explain critical race theory, they usually spit out, it teaches white kids that they are bad because they're white. I missed that day in class. And when you ask them about woke, I mean, last week, even Fox host Dana Perino said, woke can just be a feeling or a sense. Here's another question relating the drag show stuff to, I guess, irresponsible parenting. This user says, would you, David, hand the car keys to your child and say, go have fun, go as fast as you want? This is equal to taking your child to a drag show. That escalated pretty quickly. No, I mean, listen, in 16 years, I will start teaching my daughter how to drive, and I will teach her the rules of the road, and I will teach her about road safety, and she will have to go to driver's ed and complete a number of hours of driver training and all of that. And then I will still continue to espouse the need to be careful when driving. And I can't think of any way in which that relates at all to a drag show. I'm really racking my brain, and I'm not understanding how there's a connection between learning to drive safely and taking a kid to a drag show. Maybe someone can explain it to me. Giddy One posted to the subreddit about me saying no president has ever been arrested, that it is false. And I received a few of these messages. This particular post says President Ulysses S. Grant, or if I were Trump, I would pronounce it Ulysses, but it's Ulysses S. Grant, was arrested in 1872 for dangerous driving. He was fined and did not contest the arrest or fine. Then going on to say President Franklin Pierce was arrested for running over a pedestrian while driving his carriage in Washington, possibly drunk driving. He was arrested but released when his identity became known. So, two things about this. It is absolutely the case that I misspoke, and I wanted to say indicted, which I think would have made my comment more accurate. But my research suggests that the Franklin Pierce story is questioned. What I've read conflicting accounts, and some say that it is not a true story about Franklin Pierce, but I'm not sure. But in any case, it does appear that Trump wouldn't be the first president arrested, but I believe from my research, it is accurate to say indicted. But we are going to continue looking into it very, very strongly. Another post from the subreddit asks, and this hits home, folks, is social media just not worth it? It's so goddamn infuriating logging on and seeing the most smugly brain dead, easily debunked BS get thousands of likes and shares. I gave up arguing with them long ago because exactly 0 of them will change their minds as a result. And I'll just get agitated with the stupidity while they fly back to the flock to claim victory. I know ignoring these clowns won't make them go away, but man, is it frustrating. I have said for a long time, I don't engage in social media arguments. Now, it's easy for me to say because I have a platform where I can do much more in an hour than in 10 hours arguing with individuals on Twitter. I understand not everybody has that. But my advice continues to be, I don't know that I would either get involved with it. For me, social media is, I want to see what is being said, but it's not for then starting to type furiously at people. I believe it is an exercise in frustration, and I sympathize with that completely. We try on our platforms, like the very subreddit that this message is from, we try to make it a more positive and controlled environment. We don't allow, direct harassment. And of course, people can disagree. We don't allow slurs and these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just, wow, your opinions really aren't based in fact. And there's really nothing I can do about that. And that is certainly a sad thing. But I would agree with this person's view. Ignoring won't make them go away, but arguing with them on Twitter won't make them change their minds. And so we have to work in a different way. We have to work through campaigns. We have to work through activism. And that is much more effective than, arguing with someone on TikTok or whatever the case may be. Get your messages in, info@davidpakman.com, or through any of the other means that you can get in touch with us. We will have such a great bonus show for you today. And if you don't have access to the bonus show because you're not a member, then we will be back on Monday with a new podcast for you.